Greetings. I'd like to start by thanking the VSC host and the VSC team for inviting me to give this talk on my Polaroid SX-70 stereographic work that was created in the mid-1980s. The actual 3D images are in the final video montage at the end, and I'll let you know when you may use the glasses and viewers for this. First, a little background. I moved to New York City in the late 1970s and was able to secure a studio near Canal Street in Lower Manhattan. Now, at the time, I was a young artist who worked in music, photography, and sculpting materials. Back then, Lower Manhattan was an aging industrial area, and the sidewalks and dumpsters were full of unusual objects and materials, which I started collecting, but I had no specific idea of what to do with them yet. I had stopped by a friend's studio one day, and I discovered that he actually owned one of those rather new, groundbreaking Polaroid SX-70 cameras. Now, this camera, back then, was a remarkable and groundbreaking invention, in some ways much like the iPhone was many years later. I asked him if I could borrow the camera, and he said, "No, take it. It was given to me. I'm not a photographer. Try it out and take it apart if you want." So, instantly, I had carte blanche with a new, novel, groundbreaking camera that I thought I would never have access to. Now, back in my studio, a new creative work process began to occur. I would usually just start with 2 or 3 objects and place them in some kind of setting with lights, an odd material background, and even just project an image on a large table. I would then take an instant Polaroid picture and sit back and allow any thoughts, feelings, or notions to arise. I could then add or remove or exchange an object, or perhaps change the scene or the environment slightly or altogether. It was quite unique to take a picture and instantly see the results. It allowed a constant state of engagement to occur. Now, this was unprecedented because photography back then really required shooting a whole roll and sending the whole roll of film to a lab, and then waiting a few days for the results. But with this new futuristic Polaroid SX-70 camera, the results were instant. You could actually change and evolve the piece as you were working, and then take another photograph and sculpt and evolve the scene further. Before I go on, here is a short wireframe video of the Polaroid SX-70 and how it worked.
So first you open the camera by pulling on the top of the viewfinder until the strut locks in the side and the camera's ready to shoot. To shoot, you focus with the wheel in the front and then press the red button when you're ready to take the picture. What happens inside the camera is there's a giant mirror laying on the bottom, and when you press the button, the shutter closes, the mirror flips up toward the back of the camera, and then the shutter makes an exposure very quickly. When it's done making the exposure, the mirror flips back down, and a gear tray on the side ejects the print. And as it pushes the print towards the front of the camera, it pushes it through the 2 rollers in the front, which spread the chemicals across the emulsion. And as it goes through the rollers, it comes out the front, and you can grab it. And then your picture's ready to self-develop.
I also found that the camera lended itself to simple modification. For instance, if you click the shutter and drop the barn doors like this, I call them the palm bay doors, the camera would go in suspension, and you could expose it for 10, 15, 20 minutes, maybe longer. This was very valuable to have for an extended period. You could do different lighting with it. And also there was the film pack. Film pack fit inside. But on the side here, there was a little gap, and if you put I used a little brass shim, it would keep the claw from pulling the film out. So you could do multiple exposures with this camera too, if by in the dark, taking out the film pack, putting in this brass shim, putting it back in the camera, and then taking shots and shots and shots. This allowed for multiple exposures. I really fell in love with the Polaroid SX-70 camera, and I wanted to have more of them to experiment with. But I had little money, so I befriended some of the pawn shops on the Lower East Side. Because back then, these cameras, the SX-70 cameras, were often found there. And I would offer to fix 2, 3, 4 of them if they would let me keep 1 or 2 and some of the broken ones. So it was a barter system, no money involved. Back in the studio, I'd alter and modify some of these Polaroid SX-70s by adding switches, cutting off the bottom so the exposure could go down to a larger film, things like that. Now these new techniques opened up new possibilities for creating images. And since I had a plethora of sculpting tools, I was able to make armatures and plexiglass screens. Here's an example. And here are a few 2D compositions. This is before I actually got into 3D. Now, the discovery of creating 3D stereoptical imagery occurred while I was going through a weekend flea market in Canal Street. A vendor had one of those 1800s Holmes viewers, which we're all familiar with. Now, I noticed that the images on the card were very similar to the prints on the XX-70s. So I bought 2 or 3 of these viewers and brought them home. And bingo, I found that they worked well. What was so compelling about this was the creamy chemical nature of Polaroid film. It was to see this stereooptically was quite a discovery. It's hard to describe and convey the excitement and fascination that this discovery generated. So I began reorganizing my studio with tables so that I could create these little scenarios or tableaus in my studio with the objects that I found, objects and materials. In Lower Manhattan, it was a heady time for the art scene, the local art scene, and friends were having shows in galleries and art spaces throughout the Lower Manhattan area. So I started constructing a few standalone viewers. And they were all kind of based around the Holmes glass viewer, because I bought several of those. Now, although the Polaroid prints worked in these 1800s viewers and eyepieces, it was not a desired way to present them to various galleries, museums, and collectors. I was aware of the 3D invention by Dr. Wheatstone in 1838, so I went to the Photographs and Prints division at the Donnell Library Center on 54th Street across from MoMA. Now remember, there was no internet yet, but I found information, drawings, and photographs of that first dual mirrored 3D viewer. And I saw that the design was very straightforward, very geometric, and I realized I could make a precision plexiglass viewer with a 90-degree mirror inside. In fact, here's a shot from above in construction. You can see the mirror inside there. Over the course of 3 years in my downtown studio, I was able to construct a number of these plexiglass Wheatstone viewers. I was invited to a show at the Pace University and also at the Test Site Gallery in Williamsburg. So I made an illuminated floor-standing presentation podium, so 5 pairs of 3D Polaroids could now be available for a person to view in a single session. By the way, the large base is actually one of a set of abandoned plexiglass streetlight lenses that I found on the deserted streets of Lower Manhattan back then. It was quite a find. And here is a short video demonstrating this viewer at the Test Site Gallery in Williamsburg. Another design for a 3D viewer allowed two people to view simultaneously while talking about what they were experiencing. Here's a video showing the initial research and development of this viewer. And here is a video showing visitors using them at the opening at the Rotunda Gallery in Brooklyn.
There's one on the other side that one of my favorites.
Another aspect of the 3D Polaroid work were the rigs I made for shooting the SX-70 cameras. The first one was just a mounting plate with a gear mechanism that I cannibalized from an old bellows camera from the 1920s. Another device was a hinged 4-foot board that offered, quote, hyper-stereo 3D Polaroid images. You can see me using this device in a reflection in the bottom of this photograph. And here is a rig I made using a hollow monopod so I could wire a shutter button on the tip. By the way, this video was from my studio in the 1980s. Exposure. The button right there. So what you do is you do what I just did. Look up in the air. Push the button. Push the button. Take the shot, bring it down. Bang, bang. The following montage closes out my presentation and features many of the tableaus or scenarios that were created stereooptically with the Polaroid SX-70 camera system. Even though each of these tableaus were made separately, the way this film combines and connects them allows for an alternative 3D experience and reflection. Coincidentally, the new, small, affordable Casio CZ101 synthesizer was also introduced about this time, so I added it to my humble collection of tape recorders and mixers. I began creating atmospheric landscapes for these 3D Polaroid tableaus. This montage features the atmospheric piece titled The Third View. Okay, please put on any glasses or viewers that are needed. Here is the montage of the work.